Hello, guys. Nat Blue here. I'm going to take a small pause from the spooky games I've been playing, which is not a good way to start October. I'll be honest, guys. I thought I was going to post a scary game today instead of this, but a video came out from the Dungeons and Dragons official YouTube channel about the 2024 DM's guide, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I really wanted to take a moment to talk about the new DMG. I've been very excited about this DMG, so I really wanted to hop into it, listen to Todd and Jeremy talk about this DMG. So we are going to hop into it. I will be pausing every so often to give commentary on everything. For anybody that is wondering, I am wearing a pumpkin short, but the reason I'm saying I'm going to be pausing every so often is because if you want to watch this full video, I highly recommend going to the Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel. It is called 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, Everything You Need to Know. This is a pretty long video, so if you would rather watch it on there, I don't mind. I just want to give my thoughts on some of this stuff.
So we have a new Dungeon Master's Guide. Tell me about what is new and exciting in this new DMG.
So this new DMG, the new Dungeon Master's Guide, is a chance for us.
I thought it was going to be Jeremy Crawford. It is Chris Parkins, so sorry about that, Chris.
To apply some of the feedback that we've gotten on the Dungeon Master's Guide that came out in 2014, and to do some things we didn't have the time for or the budget for last time. And one of the key philosophical things was remembering that this book ought to be, the Dungeon Master's best friend. It should feel like the book that the Dungeon Master considers to be indispensable when they're creating content for their games or when they're running their games. And so we went back and took a look at the 2014 book and said, okay, what parts of this book are delivering on that philosophy and what parts of this book aren't? Those conversations led us to restructure the book so that it's easier to find the information that you need, that it's more intuitive in terms of the order in which the information is presented, and adding things to the book that would be more timeless and always useful to Dungeon Masters.
So, quick pause here. I love Chris Parkins, but the artwork in this book also looks like it's going to be amazing. I think the artwork for all of the stuff they've showed so far has been really good. I'm very impressed. But what I wanted to pause and say is, although I'm a huge D&D nerd, I love D&D. And I have DM'd, I think, 2 games now, along with some one-shots and stuff like that. I've never read the Dungeon Master's Guide. And part of the reason I've never read the Dungeon Master's Guide is because it is not intuitive. So the DMG is not easy to follow along with. It's not easy to find stuff sometimes. So I have not read the DMG. So I'm really excited to get a retelling of that is a little bit easier to digest.
So first and foremost, the Dungeon Master's Guide is bigger. Like all of the revised 5th edition books, we have added pages to the book. Things that were not in the 2014 book that are in this book include 5 short sample adventures, a complete campaign setting, a lore glossary, which is a place where we gather up sort of encyclopedia-style entries on various characters, locations, and substances in Dungeons & Dragons that you may or may not know about. And another totally new feature of this book is the Bastions chapter. Those things alone, the adventure content, the campaign setting, the lore glossary, and the Bastions chapter, that's all new content that we wanted to get into this book, and that's why the book is one of the reasons why the book is bigger.
Why is
So I'm torn on this a little bit. So I love the idea of condensing stuff into one book. That way it costs the consumer less money. They don't have to buy multiple books. That was a big thing with 5e, that if you wanted like a campaign setting, you have to buy the campaign setting book. But at the same time, I think it would have been beneficial to just release a smaller source book for a campaign setting and a few adventure hooks instead of bogging down the DMG. My only concern is they say it's easier to find stuff in this version. But is it going to be easier if there's also entire sections dedicated to an adventure? I'm curious about how they're going to organize this. I think you put the adventures at the end of the book, and this entire conversation doesn't need to be had. If you put everything at the end of the book, we don't have to worry about it. It's going to be fine.
It is so chunky.
It's a chunky book. Yes, exactly.
We've got tons of new art for magic items.
Oh, it's a few people.
More magic items are illustrated now than in 2014, so there's more things you can see what they look like. There's a couple places where we weren't super satisfied with the way a magic item
Do you think that's supposed to be Alchemist Fire? I think that might be Alchemist Fire.
looked. And so we redid those. Our art director, Emmy, put together a lineup of all the potion art we had, just so you could see them all together. There's a couple of really sweet pieces in there, some sort of inside jokes, like the potion of invisibility. It looks like an empty bottle. And the potion of pugilism bears a certain resemblance to canned spinach.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Great.
So one of the chapters of the book is called Creating Adventures, and it's all about helping the DM create adventures. The advice that we give is very different advice than we'd give to somebody who is trying to basically publish their own content. Because when you're creating content for yourself and you are the audience, there are tips and tricks that we can give you to help you do that. But all the advice aside, nothing compares to being able to see the advice being implemented. So after giving you a bunch of advice on how you can create your own adventure content for your home groups, we present 5 short adventures in a format that we think DMs will want to emulate and use for their own prep, accompanied by the maps that are in one of the appendices of the book. These adventures are meant to show you how you can create and outline your own adventure content in a way that will be very easy for you to run at the table. Most of the adventures are about a half a page. Doesn't seem like a lot, but you can actually pack a lot of information into a half page if you're the person who's going to be running the adventure.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Okay. So I thought this was going to be like a chapter per adventure. Half a page is not bad. So that's a little bit more understanding than what I thought. This is a bad freeze frame for Todd here.
Yeah, like that's the way I'm sure you don't format your entire, when you're running your own
No.
home game, you're not like formatting everything appropriately.
No, when I'm running my home game,
Yeah.
I essentially have a piece of paper that has notes
Yeah.
and key beats, and then I have whatever maps and stat blocks I need to run encounters. That's kind of the philosophy behind these adventures. Is they're skeletal in a way, but they have all the information that you need to feel confident that you'll be able to play with your friends.
I enjoy these maps, and I want to tell you why. So a lot of the time when somebody makes a map, they're kind of overdoing it. Like there's a really fancy background in the back. There's a little bit too much detail. I kind of dig this style of this map. It's very minimalistic. I like that they're just using a white background with the tiles. The artwork is very simple, but it still tells you what's going on. Like I can assume this big room near the bottom and this bottom left room are both filled with vines or something. Like I can make that assumption. I can assume that this is a staircase down to like a basement level. Maybe this fireplace is lit. Like this is very simplified, but it gives you everything that you need. Like this is probably a statue right here. So I really dig this kind of map. I don't see a lot of like black and white maps, so that's pretty awesome.
So we have a level 1 adventure, level 2 adventure, level 3, and then I think we have a couple gaps and then some higher level content in there as well. And I mentioned that these adventures are designed for use with maps. There is, in the 2014 DMG, we did have an appendix of maps. We've redone that appendix, created a bunch of wholly new maps that we think are more versatile and useful over and over and over again. And those adventures refer to some of those maps. And then there are additional maps in the appendix that we don't use in the adventures that you as a DM can just take and make your own.
You've just handed everyone a toolbox for running an adventure in a few minutes.
Correct.
That's what I love about that.
Yeah.
Like you have these adventure hooks for various levels that you could implement yourself, and then you have maps that are attached to those, but then you have other maps as well. This really feels like it's giving people the freedom to just jump into dungeon mastering so much faster than I've ever had published before in D&D.
Exactly. Throughout the adventures chapter, there's all sorts of advice, tables, and other things that are designed to be used. We were very careful in making sure, and we had consultants join us on this journey to make sure that the content, the advice we're giving you for creating adventures, and the sample adventures were actually things that DMs will be like, yeah, this is how I want to do this, and this is not as hard as I thought it might be. And if you are an experienced dungeon master who has created a lot of adventure content for your home games, I'm sure you'll find some things in the chapter that are affirming and validating, in addition to some other useful stuff, like just sort of evergreen stuff that you can plunder, like the maps.
Perfect.
I do like that for a couple of reasons. I'm excited that they're putting some adventures for lower levels and stuff. That will be really useful for the early DMs, the new DMs. But I also like what he just said, plundering stuff. Sometimes it's fun to read over an adventure and just see if there's anything you want to borrow for a future adventure. You know what I mean? Like just taking small things from there. Maybe the layout of the room, like the map. Maybe just the concept of an adventure. I've gone online before and found adventures where I'm like, oh, I love the idea of this. I don't like how it's being, how it's laid out in this adventure. Or I need to reshape this to fit my homebrew world, you know? So I really enjoy that. That's great.
For each kind of stage of the planning process, we give you just tons of ideas. There's tables of adventure hooks that are broken out by the tier of play. So levels 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 to 16, 17 plus. You can see how the
Look at that little bag of holding right there. That's pretty sick.
stakes escalate in those adventure hooks. I say adventure hooks, and really I mean the situations that are going on, because then there's a separate section on here's hooks that will draw characters into those situations. We tried to separate those concepts a little bit. The sample adventures just kind of show all of that in practice, and they range from a pretty straightforward, there's a corruption in the forest, go find the source and kill it, to there's a fairy ball and you have to persuade the Baron of the Ball to give you his blessing.
The campaign setting. Yes. So in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, there was a chapter on campaigns, maybe the first or second chapter of the book. It really just sort of threw you into the deep end.
Yeah.
In the 2024 DMG, we have some earlier chapters that are giving you information about what it means to be a dungeon master and sort of tricks of the trade and whatnot. We've moved the campaigns chapter to later in the book. It follows the Creating Adventures chapter. The reason for pushing it deeper into the book was we don't expect new DMs, particularly, to immediately jump into campaign creation.
Yeah.
Until they kind of understand what DMing is all about and how they find players and the things that they need to play and how they help their players build their characters and build a cohesive party, things like that. But when you are ready to build a campaign, this chapter does, I think, a very good job, a much better job of giving you advice that is really useful and showing you what a campaign looks like by giving you an example of one, which no previous Dungeon Master's Guide has ever tried to do. No previous Dungeon Master's Guide included a complete campaign setting. This is the first one to do so.
Right.
I do like what he said about new DMs. So if anybody is interested in DMing, I do recommend starting with a module. My first module was Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I made a lot of changes to it. I will, a friend of mine that was in the campaign with me, we would like to do a video about different changes I made to the campaign and how we feel about the campaign overall. But it really gave me that love of adventure, love of world building. And then I jumped straight into building my own campaign setting. The one thing that Wild Beyond the Witchlight did do to me is make me too interested in the Feywild. I love the Feywild. It's probably my favorite setting. And there is a content creator on YouTube called Feywild Fiend. And she does a lot of D&D content around the Feywild. She's done some monsters from the Feywild, some like Dark Fey content, things about the different courts. And if you guys are interested in the Feywild, if you are going to One Wild Beyond the Witchlight, I know this is a tangent to get into, but if you are going to One Wild Beyond the Witchlight anytime, I would highly recommend watching some of her videos. She has heavily influenced how I run my Feywild campaigns, or the parts of my campaigns that are in the Feywild.
And we chose the campaign setting very carefully. This is
better be the
D&D's
Sword
50th
Coast.
anniversary. These books are a celebration of that anniversary. And we thought the best campaign setting for this book is the Greyhawk setting.
Is it Grey?
And for those who
What?
don't know, Greyhawk is the first official Dungeons & Dragons campaign.
So I knew they weren't going to say the Sword Coast because we've already been told we're getting a Sword Coast campaign setting, like a module, in the next couple of years. I did not expect Greyhawk for some reason, but I have not played anything in Greyhawk. I know a little bit about Greyhawk. It does make sense, like you said, this is the first campaign setting, but I just did not expect Greyhawk. I would not like this setting. I don't like ridiculous names for things. I like my names to be a little bit more grounded in like the English language. So like Realmore Bay, Duchy of Ernst, Near Div. I don't like it. I don't like it.
It is an old and very beloved place that has given rise to some of our greatest heroes, from Tasha to Mordenkainen, and enemies, from Igwilv to Ayuz.
There's also something lovely about the first campaign that you hand someone in the Dungeon Master's Guide is the first campaign.
Yes.
Aren't Igwilv and Tasha the same person? I feel like he gave two examples of the same chick, just at different points of her life, you know?
And the thing that I loved about Greyhawk when I first discovered it back in whatever it was, 1980, I guess, is how customizable it is. The original Greyhawk Gazetteer was a very thin product. It gave you an entire campaign setting in about 32 pages with 2 big fold-out maps. When I read it, there was a lot of material in there I wouldn't have used because there was some wargaming stuff in there as well. But I was struck by how sort of open and free it is, how liberating it was. It didn't put any constraints on me as a DM. I felt from an instant that the creators wanted me to take this setting and make it my own. And staying true to that, the version of Greyhawk that appears in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, while it's complete, it's also, due to the space that we have, it's a skeleton upon which we expect you to flesh things out.
We have purposely left the details of Greyhawk pretty vague. Our starting point for that whole section was the original World of Greyhawk folio, which was really just an alphabetical listing of all these countries. We pulled back from there to focus more on the city of Greyhawk and then talk in broad terms about the regions of the surrounding world and importantly, the themes and major conflicts that can drive adventures in the world. So the threat of Ayuz in the north, the threat of evil dragons and Tiamat, or the threat of elemental evil, which is this constant recurring theme in the world of Greyhawk. And the starter adventures, to some degree, touch on those if you want to pull those out from the adventures and stretch them into a theme that can last for a whole campaign.
What we do is we give you a poster map in the book that has the world of Greyhawk wilderness on one side and the city of Greyhawk on the other, because we use the city of Greyhawk as a sample of what a campaign hub can be. A campaign hub is sort of where the campaign starts. It's kind of its center, its core. And while campaigns can often drift away into new hubs and go off in strange directions, we thought it was very important that we not only give you a campaign setting, but give you an example of a campaign hub, a place where the characters can call their home, where you can use as a launching point for adventures in that world. We describe the city of Greyhawk. We flesh out some of its places and inhabitants. And we give you a whole bunch of hooks and ways to use this city as a hub in your campaign. And then we go out beyond that. We go into the regions around the city and we describe what are some of the nearby areas of interest. Because in a campaign, as soon as you strike out from the hub, you need places to go, dungeons in the hills, or threats in the forest, that kind of thing. We flesh that out, and then we go even broader and show you the rest of the land known as Eastern Auric, or the Flaneus, this vast region around the city of Greyhawk that's got nations, it's got wildernesses, it's got mountain ranges, it's got all kinds of territories, land masses to explore, different environments from deserts to Arctic cold. We flesh out all of those domains to the extent that we believe DMs need to get sort of a lay of the land, but at the same time saying, hey, DM, now that we've given you this, make it your own.
Yeah.
Put your dungeon here if you want to. Add a town here if you want to. That kind of thing. It's very much built on the idea of we're giving you a sandbox.
Yeah.
We're throwing some toys in, and we're saying, go play.
Yeah. Greyhawk is yours now.
It is, yes.
So, wanted to take a moment on this. I'm trying not to pause too much because we still have a half hour of this video left. But I really enjoy what he's talking about right now. So I love the maps for Greyhawk. First off, the world map was great. It helps. Oh, I'll just go to the city. So world map was great. I loved the city map. It had it important into different sections, like an artisan section of the map. And the reason I like this so much is because I think my biggest weakness as a DM is making maps. I have Incarnate. I have the premium subscription and everything. Love Incarnate. I'm not good at making maps. And I think this kind of gives a good structure for how to make a map for those new DMs. And even for the veteran DMs that are not good at making them. And then I like what he is saying about the different cities on that world map, where the DM can take those cities and kind of just make them their own. I don't think they need to flesh out those cities right now, because the city of Greyhawk should be enough for a starter campaign. You can do those adventures in there. It's a big enough city from what I saw on the map that you should be able to spend a long time in that one town just doing an entire campaign. And then the DM can homebrew the other cities in the Greyhawk setting. I love that.
That's a great way to say it. Greyhawk is yours. And because of its legacy, you get the sense that, oh, if I'm going to build my adventures if I'm going to create my own version of Greyhawk, I can create, locations that have as much weight to them or importance to them of some of the greatest locations that have ever appeared in D&D before. Tomb of Horrors had a place in Greyhawk. The Lost Caverns of Sajkan had a place in Greyhawk. Your dungeons are just as welcome there as those very famous iconic ones. Your heroes, your villains are just as welcome there as Greyhawk's most iconic ones. The other great thing about Greyhawk is, because it is the origin of so much of D&D's lore, it feels right for these books because we have spells in the player's handbook that are named after people who came from Greyhawk.
Yeah.
We have monsters in the monster manual that originated, and were sort of found their first homes in Greyhawk. So it's deeply, deeply, deeply embedded into the DNA of D&D. The next element I want to talk about is the lore glossary. There are two appendices in the book. One is maps, one is the lore glossary. The lore glossary is an alphabetical listing of some of the most famous places, figures, and materials that are so iconic to D&D that we want them to be shared knowledge among all D&D players of all ages. This is helpful to us because often in our published adventures and elsewhere, we will casually name drop something like Orcus, or Mordenkainen, or Lolth, or the Demon Web Pits, or Baldur's Gate. Well, everybody knows Baldur's Gate now. But,
Now they do. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. In the Dungeon Master's Guide 2024, we want to make sure that there are places in the book that tell you where these places are, what these places are, who these people are, et cetera, and so forth. What is mithril in D&D? What is adamantine in D&D?
Oh, that's perfect.
Thing. The lore glossary captures a lot of that lore that many of us old-timers have embedded in our heads, but a lot of D&D players don't.
Yeah.
And so this is just an easy, quick reference guide for people who are looking for information about this mysterious thing they just stumbled upon.
Sort of a who's who for D&D.
It is very much like that, yes, absolutely, with some nice art pieces sprinkled in.
That stuff appeals to me no matter how much I already know. I just like reading like a little bit of the lore of all those people.
And a lot of the lore comes from every past edition as well. Well, we were very careful to seed in some things in the lore glossary that surfaced prominently in different editions, like the Raven Queen, for instance, was a big figure in 4th edition, and she gets an entry in the lore glossary. A Sararak, who goes all the way back to Tomb of Horrors, 1st edition, he gets an entry in the lore glossary. So the fourth wholly new thing in...
Let's pause for a second. So I love the lore glossary. I won't spend much time talking about it. I just like that they're giving a quick reference. I don't understand all of the D&D lore. I love researching D&D, but I don't know anything about like Mordenkainen. I don't know anything about Acererak. So I'm excited for that. That's amazing. We can keep it going though.
The Dungeon Master's Guide that I haven't talked about yet is the Bastions chapter.
I am very, very excited for this.
If you saw the Bastion rules that went out in Unearthed Arcana last year, you got a glimpse of what to expect.
But only a glimpse.
Just a glimpse. After getting feedback, we've made some refinements, some additions, had a bit of fun. And of course, you didn't get to see any of the art or any of the other glorious things that are going to make this chapter wondrous to behold. But it is an opt-in because not every campaign is built for Bastions. And it's really up to the DM whether or not to allow players to have them based on the game that you're running. It may be a great thing for players to get, and it may not work.
Like a roving adventure that just spans a continent doesn't necessarily make sense to have a bastion. But
Exactly,
a bastion
yes.
is a great narrative hook
Yes.
for a group of adventurers who want to maintain a keep, a tower.
Precisely, yes. If your campaign is structured in such a way that the characters can have a home base, then Bastions will work beautifully. And so Bastions is, while the word is new to our lexicon in D&D, it's built on a very old concept because even going all the way back to the earliest editions of D&D, there were rules for building strongholds.
Yeah.
Often you didn't get access to them, though, until you were much higher level. We have designed the Bastion system in the Dungeon Master's Guide so that characters can start building their bastions at level 5.
Wow.
Which is a nice sweet spot in adventuring. You've got some experience under your belt, you've got some cash, and you've got some fame to throw around. So at level 5, with your DM's consent, the characters can start building their bastions. And these continue to grow over the life of your adventuring career. But the magnificent thing about them is you basically run them as kind of like a separate little activity. It does not stop you from being an adventurer.
Yeah.
Your adventurer can go around saving the multiverse, run off to the Nine Hells or run off to the Feywild, do what you have to do. Once your bastion is up and running, it is kind of a self-sustaining unit. And it's the players who run the bastions. So every player is in charge of their own bastion and their own bastion's maintenance. And there are this mechanism called the bastion turn, which activates whenever the DM basically says, okay, your bastions now take a bastion turn. You don't even have to be home for your bastion, for something to be happening in your bastion. What's fabulous about this is that not only does it give players a safe harbor, a home base, it gives them access to resources that they can't otherwise get necessarily as their characters. Your bastion can furnish you with things that you might not be able to get elsewhere. you can issue orders to your bastion,
Yeah.
and those orders generate things. There's a craft order that you can issue to your bastion so your bastion can make things. There's a harvesting order. If your bastion has certain facilities that allow you to harvest things like poisons and herbs and other things, you can get access to stuff.
Which is that fantasy. Like the fantasy, the first time I made a D&D character, I started thinking about like, well, what if I had a tower? Or
Right.
that was running this whole time? And
Yes.
what if I did have some minions or whatever as
Exactly.
things
You can
progress?
issue-
Because that's what you would daydream about.
Right,
So it's like
yes.
a mini game for that.
Yes, and you can recruit to your bastion. You can find creatures to inhabit your bastion. There's all kinds of fun mini activities built around this idea of issuing orders to the bastion while your characters are away, or while your characters are there. If you're there, great. You can actually make things in your bastion.
Every dungeon is a bastion that went wrong.
Right, and if you like your adventuring colleagues and you want to combine your bastions into one Uber bastion, you can do that too. You're each individually still in charge of your piece of it,
Right.
but there is certain advantages to unifying your bastion. One of them being you can share its defenders,
Yeah.
which has definite advantages. So all these opportunities are now opened up to players that they didn't have before.
Bastions are a chance for players to carve out a piece of their world and make it their own. And really, the DM's control stops at the walls of the bastion or the outer boundary of the bastion, whatever that is, so that the players can get a taste of being in the DM seat and telling their own stories of what things unfold with this cast of characters that inhabit their bastion, and have a place they feel like is home. It's like with the illustrations of the species in the Player's Handbook. We wanted to show what are characters fighting for. Mm-hmm. The Bastion kind of makes that a reality throughout a character's career once they establish this place. Like, I'm not just fighting for my own self-interest. I've got people at home that I want to protect. I've got a place that I care about. It sort of ups the emotional stakes in the game.
Okay, so I want to give some thoughts on this because we've been going for a while without me stopping. So, I do love this idea, specifically for a few different campaign settings. The campaign I'm currently running, it wouldn't work because they are traveling a continent. They wouldn't have a good way to get to the Bastion. But like Chris Perkins said, I think this would be really good for a campaign where the players can have a home base. Specifically, what I have in mind right now is I really want to run Keys to the Golden Vault, which is a 5e module where the players are breaking into things. They're like thieves. And I think the main thing is you're trying to, the key to the Golden Vault is like a group, but you are carrying out heists is the best way to say it. It would be cool to make a bastion, or combine everybody's bastion into a really big thieves guild that can help the players like scout out the place that they're about to rob and get like schematics or help them figure out what they have to break into, whether or not it's a certain type of safe or if there's a magical enchantment stopping them that they need to prepare a spell for. And I think that would be really cool for a heist campaign setting. It would be really cool for a setting where you are in the same city for the entire campaign. It would be great for a setting where you are trying to stop somebody in a specific kingdom, so you get close to that BBG's asshole kind of thing. I think there's some cool possibilities here. I would love to use this for Keys to the Golden Vault. I read that module, and there's a lot of changes that I would like to make. I think a Bastion would fit in really well in that kind of campaign setting, though.
Players are essentially DMing their own microcosms within the larger campaign, giving identities to their hirelings in the bastions, triggering events that happen in the bastions and seeing the results and consequences of those events. That's a very DM side of things. So I love the idea that the bastions are in the Dungeon Master's Guide because, in effect, it's allowing the players to get a taste of what DMing is like.
Yeah, it's very sneaky.
Yes, it's a wonderful out-of-game activity.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great mini game. Just a
when
daydream.
you're if the session has to be canceled or whatever, and you can't play tonight or whatever, that's okay. Your DM can just say, everybody take a Bastion turn.
Yeah. Send the message.
And
Everyone
then
can
off
work
the
on their own
players
thing.
go, and they just let the DMs know what their Bastions did on that particular turn. It's a fabulous sort of game within a game.
I love that.
I'm hoping that that when DMs and players really start to interact with it and visualize their Bastions, I'm hoping that they send me like maps and pictures of the Bastions that they built.
And that again.
Okay, another quick sidebar. I think this would also be a really cool way to get the players some passive income. So Todd was saying earlier, he's always wanted to play somebody that has their own inn or tavern or something along those lines. And I think it would be cool. Like, your players are adventuring and they end up having to take out a tavern owner for whatever reason. Maybe they're secretly a vampire. Maybe it's secretly a hag. I did that in my campaign a few months ago. There was a inn called the Silver Sisters, and it was secretly 2 hags running this inn. And the players had to defeat the hags. But now that leaves an opening where nobody owns this inn. So maybe the players get the opportunity to buy the inn. And then they have this Bastion that is earning them an income, but they don't have to be there. They can have like a manager take over the inn, where they get paid a certain percentage of the profits, and then the players get the rest of that profit. And then you're just kind of making money throughout the campaign without much added work. So I really do like this.
Again, that's another thing I felt myself immediately doing. Well, I had to draw out every little thing. Like, this is what my wizard tower looks like. Or this is like the inn that got hunted by a vampire looks like.
Right, yes.
In Ravenloft. Like, that was always the worst hook I would do to my players. I would give them property in Ravenloft.
Oh, see. Yeah, I mean, it comes cheap, but I mean,
Yeah, the mortgage is very low. So are the interest rates.
It's like, how many people died in this house? Oh, don't worry about it.
Why put a number on things?
And because we want the Bastion system to play nice with the rest of the Dungeon Master's Guide too, there are references to Bastion elements in other parts of the book, like the Greyhawk campaign setting in Chapter 5 tells the DM good places where characters can set up their Bastions.
And then we have just a massive treasury, treasure section.
Yes, so as in 2014, the biggest chapter in the Dungeon Master's Guide is the treasure chapter.
Loot?
Loot, yes. Magic items are typically the purview of the Dungeon Master, which is why magic items end up in the Dungeon Master's Guide, even though players access and play with them a lot. And so just like we're doing with the spells in the Player's Handbook, every magic item is getting, you've got a little hairy eyeball. We took a look at it. We made some refinements to it. We stuffed even more magic items into the chapter to address certain holes or gaps that we'd identified.
The potion of fire breath. Okay, that's cool. It's not alchemist fire, it's fire breath. That's pretty sick.
For instance, there in the 2014 DMG, there weren't a lot of common magic items, so we imported a few. We also saw opportunity to squeeze in some, shall we say, nostalgic delights. In celebration of 50th anniversary, including things like magic items used by the kids in the D&D cartoon.
Perfect.
Hank's energy bow, or Diana's quarterstaff, Eric's shield, Bobby's club, Presto's hat of many spells. No, not Uni's horn.
Kelly got her.
Uni gets to keep her horn at least for a bit. And one of the items that's already in there, of course, Sheila's Cloak of Invisibility has been in the game a long time, but it felt long overdue to get the other items stuffed in there as well. We've sort of opened the door on some items as well. For instance, flame tongues are an example of a weapon that used to be very limited to the type of weapon you could apply it to.
Yeah.
We've now actually broadened that. So you could have a flame tongue great club if you want to.
Yeah.
Or a flame tongue halberd. So just looking for ways to surprise and delight, even in existing items.
I need more trick arrows. So I will spend a lot of money on trick arrows.
Yes. The arrow of slaying became the ammunition of slaying, of which the arrow of slaying is but one. So if you want sling stones of slaying, or bolts of slaying, or bullets of slaying, now that is baked in
Perfect.
to the game.
Is every bullet not a bullet of slaying? I understand that it's like a fantasy setting. Bullets are bullets, dude. Like I don't know. An arrow, like, yeah, it's going to do some damage. And I understand, like, I think the arrow of slaying is barbed. I might be wrong. So it makes sense that it does more damage. It is a bullet. Like, just, I guess, never mind. Forget what I just said. Hollow Jacket, bullets exist. So I guess that's just a bullet of slaying.
Because that's the other thing. The DMG, the Player's Handbook, all the new core rule books are really opening things up for the multiverse of D&D, and that can mean laser guns, or that can mean, weapons that use ammunition like bullets and stuff like that. Like, so you have, because we're talking about Eberron, we're talking about, Expedition to Barrier Peaks, or Spelljammer. Like, this is a broad set of magical items in fantasy that you're supporting in this one.
Right, and just allowing more variety in the world, because variety is richness, and the D&D is many, many worlds, and
their prices.
Well, there always were, but in the 2014, you could divine the cost of a rare item or a very rare item. We've made that a lot clearer this time around by fronting, hey, here's how magic items are costed.
Yeah.
We've also taken another crack at the crafting magic items rules. How do you, a player, how do you, a character, craft an item of your own with your DM's consent, of course?
Right. That's extremely exciting for a lot of people. Yeah. Because then you take ownership of a magical item, potentially that you made yourself, or any item.
It's been fun to try to shoehorn more items, to make items more fun, and then to open up the possibilities for crafting magic items in this new version of the Treasure Chapter.
And is the crafting system also in the Player's Handbook, or is it only the DMG?
That is a great question. So the answer is yes. There is crafting magic items in the Player's Handbook, but it's limited to some very simple potions and scrolls.
Okay.
So you can create a low-level spell scroll, or you can create a potion of healing or some other low-level potion. The rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide are broader and encompass more variety.
I'm looking at the new Dungeon Master's Guide cover art. It's very charming, and on purpose having like Warduke and Venger up front. Like, this is who you are as the Dungeon Master. Not only to show them a good time, but you are the one who embodies the villains.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I wasn't going to bring this up. Let's talk about it though. Crafting magic items was an artificer thing. And I'm sure there were a few exceptions. Don't get me wrong, there's certainly a few exceptions. But I think majority like the artificer. Because there is the alchemy artificer. There's the armor, the artillerist. This is pretty much saying, I feel like I'm worried about this because they keep saying, hey, you can use classes from the old 5e books, which is great. They say they're all backwards compatible. I don't know how accurate that is yet, but they are saying they're all backwards compatible. But it does seem like they're making it so. I mean, with this in that last crafting video that they released probably a couple months ago, it's probably been a minute. It does seem like they are pretty much making it so that the artificer wouldn't make sense to play. Like, the artificer is being replaced by rules that just allow everybody to do this. And I'm sure there's proficiencies and stuff along those lines. It'll probably be easier to do if you play a 5e artificer, but it does just rub me the wrong way a little bit that it seems like these rules might make it so artificers aren't necessary for a campaign setting.
That was very deliberate, whereas with the Player's Handbook, we wanted to show sort of an iconic group of heroes and a gold dragon to celebrate the golden anniversary of D&D. With the Dungeon Master's Guide, like you say, Todd, The Dungeon Master is about playing the villains and the monsters more often than not. And for the 50th anniversary, it seemed absolutely fitting to tap into some of the most, I guess, iconic, nostalgic villains in our huge rogues gallery of villains. I've always had a fondness for the cartoon series. I grew up with the cartoon series. Many people don't know Venger, they don't know Warduke, and they don't know Scylla, and I want them to.
It's also a bit of the aesthetic for the art for the DMG, because you are the one who runs the villains in these scenarios, so the art, it's not focused on heroes.
Right.
Okay, I only know Warduke out of that list because Warduke is in Wild Beyond the Witchlight. They did a weird thing where they threw Warduke into the League of Malevolence as kind of a throwback character. To be honest, they kind of did it with the knowledge that, like, hey, people are going to recognize this guy from all your editions of the game.
As much. Right?
Yes, it's focused on the threat or the danger.
So if you want the creepiest art, you need the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Well, certainly with this Dungeon Master's Guide, we wanted it to feature the villains and locations and places of D&D. Because the Dungeon Master's Guide, not only do they bring villains and monsters to life, they also bring settings to life, worlds to life. And so we took great care this time around to make sure that we have lots of art showing bad guys and places, so that you get sort of the full range of the multiverse. And you and I now have batted around this multiverse word a few times. How important is the multiverse to D&D? It's extremely important. It is the default setting for D&D. It is all of our worlds. It is all of the worlds that our fans create. They are all part of this multiverse, and they are all welcome, and they are all important. So in our art this time around, and in the books themselves, in the text, we wanted to drive that point home, that the multiverse is our setting, and look, it's magnificent to behold. We have a whole chapter on the cosmology of D&D, which talks about the worlds of D&D and the planes of existence that are out there waiting to be explored. We tried to make them more beautiful this time around. We tried to give you even more useful information as a dungeon master about some of these places, while still making it clear that, hey, you're the DM. What you show of the multiverse is entirely up to you.
Perfect.
We haven't talked a lot about the tracking sheets.
Yeah, tell me about the tracking sheets.
One of the fun new features that's sprinkled through the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide are these delightfully charming tracking sheets that not only do we put in the books as kind of like a show and tell to show you what we mean, but also we're going to make them downloadable off of our website so that you can just print them out and put them in whatever you use for your campaign journal.
I'm so happy he said they were going to be downloadable. I saw that picture and I'm like, I'm not going to write in the DMG. I'm not going to do it. So I'm happy that he's saying they're downloadable. That's great.
And these sheets are designed to help you keep track of important information in your game.
Look at that little
or in your
guy.
campaign. If you want to create a new NPC, there is a sheet that we give you that you can use and write on to capture important information about that NPC, and it's presented in a very clean, elegant way. There is a sheet that you can use to build settlements like towns and villages. There's a sheet players can use to keep track of important information about their bastions. There is a sheet you can use as a DM to keep track of the magic items that you've dispensed to the party in the course of the campaign, to keep track of important character information so that you have some information about the characters in the party readily accessible to you as a DM behind your screen. So that when you're planning adventures, you can remember, things about characters' backstories that might tie into greater plots in your campaign. There's a sheet that you can use to track major conflicts in your campaign and then update them accordingly. And then I think most importantly, or the sheet that I find most useful, is the session planner sheet, where you've got a game session next week. You can write down the key beats of what you think is going to happen, key characters, make notes and other things. These sheets are beautiful. I think they're compelling. I think a lot of DMs will want to use them or want to create versions of them. And they have charming little illustrations of monsters on them, which I think are absolutely delightful. Baby monsters.
Everyone loves.
Everybody does love baby monsters. Thank you, Todd. I like this. I hope that the PDFs that you can download are form fillable. A lot of my DMing nowadays is done from a laptop. I'll be honest. I use a gosh, what is the name of that? The Microsoft. It's purple. I use Microsoft to keep track of different encounters and stuff that I plan on running. And I have tabs on there for different stat blocks. So I'll have like an NPC stat block that I have all of the NPCs in one tab, an enemy stat block, allies, stuff like that. And then I have a note section on there for updates on the player. But this seems like a good way to do updates on the player, where you can be like, hey, this PC has got this magic item this session. And then I don't have to go to a tab and try to figure it out. I can just keep track of it on a form fillable document. I am going to assume that it will be form fillable because that's what they've done in the past with the character sheets. I am also going to assume that I'm probably not going to use this exact form. What I normally do is I like the stuff that Wizards of the Coast puts out, but a lot of the time I'll go online and find like one that somebody else designed. So I have different versions of the character sheets based on different classes. So like the Rogue character sheet that I have, I got off of a website I did a review on probably about a month ago. It's in my TTRPG channels, my TTRPG playlist. So I have some character specific stuff there or class specific stuff there. Like the Rogue one will tell you, hey, how many D6s do you have for sneak attack? That way you don't have to look it up every time you try to sneak attack. There's just a piece of the paper that you can write the sneak attack damage on and stuff along those lines. So I do like the idea of having a character tracker there. I guess I got on a little bit of a tangent there, but I do like this.
Loves baby monsters.
Baby monsters, yeah. So they really are quite charming. And I think that in addition to things like the lore glossary and the poster map, I think that these tracking sheets will be one of the most endearing and always useful parts of the book. Now, I haven't.
Ooh, I like that it has the settlement populations and stuff. Because that's something I have issues with sometimes. Like a village is less than 500, the town is 501 to 5,000. A city has more than 5,000 people. It has a defining trait of the city. I love that. The claim to fame section, I love that. I have a city in my world where I won't give the name of it or anything, but it is primarily inhabited, or it was founded by gnomes. When they came to the material plane from the Feywild, they founded this city. And it is known, its claim to fame, or its defining trait is it's a very eclectic city. So it has a lot of different races there. The gnomes are one of the most accepting races in my campaign setting. And the claim to fame is it is the most technologically advanced city. But having that defining thing at the top, it is obviously a city. It has more than 5,000 people, but it's not something I think about. So having this settlement tracker there, it would be nice to have that in the front of my mind. Just like, hey, this is a bit crowded of a city. And then I could put things that happen in the campaign on this paper. So like, they have a statue in the middle of the city of the founder that got destroyed in my campaign. So it would be nice to remember if the players come back to that city, hey, that statue's not there anymore. It's gone. There's now like a small hole in the ground. Or maybe the gnomes have repaired the statue and I could remember, hey, they mended this. It took a long time, but they used mending and put the statue back together. So I do really like this paper. I keep getting onto tangents. This video is going to be long. I am sorry, guys.
And talked about the first 3 chapters of the book, Todd.
That's my fault. I am a terrible interviewer. Well, tell me about.
You're an amazing interviewer, Todd. I love Todd.
Tell me about the first few chapters of the book.
Chapters 1, 2, and 3 are super important.
Okay.
And we put them at the front of the book because they're super important.
That's a good structure.
Chapter 1 is called The Basics.
Perfect.
It is a short chapter, primarily aimed at DM curious folks who haven't DM'd or haven't DM'd much and are curious to really kind of dive in and sink their teeth into the DM role.
Right.
What do I need to play? How do I get my players together? What's the first steps, basically? What is this DM screen and what the heck do I do with it? Very, very basic. Let's set the table.
Here's your first day as a dungeon master.
Yeah, if you're even thinking about being a dungeon master, these are the things that you want to think about. And this is just some baseline information that will be super, super valuable to you. And then when we quickly segue out of there into chapter 2, which is called Running the Game. And it is literally that. It includes a sample walkthrough of play. There are similar things in the player's handbook, but this one is more aimed at the dungeon master. It has very basic but tried and true advice on creating a fantastic experience for your players and for customizing the experience for the players that you have, which I think is super key to being a successful dungeon master. It's not enough just to necessarily run a published adventure and hope that the players get everything you want out of it. You have to think about who's around the table and make sure that you're delivering an experience that everybody's going to enjoy. And so this chapter is focused on helping the DM actually run a fun game. And I think that even if you are a very experienced DM, there's going to be something in here that's going to make you go, oh, well, yeah, I should totally be doing that. How do you bring foreshadowing into play and make that part of your game? You may be an experienced dungeon master, but you haven't had a lot of experience with a certain aspect of the game, and this chapter will help you with that.
How to look like a genius. Yeah.
Yes, how to convince your players that it was your plan all along.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I've often written articles about things like the Invisible Railroad, is how do you keep an adventure moving toward a destination while not making the players feel like they're trapped on a railroad and have no power to alter what's going on around them. The Running the Game chapter is all about creating best play experiences, and so it's super valuable both to new and experienced DMs.
In chapter 2, we started off with a section called Running Combat. Talks about rolling initiative and tracking position on the grid and that sort of thing. And we've always had a section called Running Combat. What we didn't have is a section called Running Interaction or a section called Running Exploration. Now we have both of those. They're not as extensive as Running Combat because it's the nature of the game that those things are more about the conversation between DM and players, really entirely in the case of interaction and more so in the case of exploration. But one of the things I added into that running exploration section is a different approach to overland travel or any kind of long journey that characters make that not only sort of streamlines the process of running a long journey, but also helps the DM plan for a journey so that it's not just a matter of, I'm going to roll an encounter for every day of travel, but rather you're thinking of the different stages of the journey, how they unfold as a narrative, and what are the obstacles that the characters have to overcome in each of these journey stages. So like that helps my narrative brain think about handling a long journey in the middle of an adventure or an adventure that is a long journey. It might be that one of these stages ends at a ruin that the characters are going to explore, or that's their destination at the end, that is the dungeon that is the centerpiece of the adventure. It's a relatively minor thing, but it really came together nicely, and I think DMs are going to find it a huge help for part of the game that is often overlooked or neglected or not really understood.
When we get to
I am happy that they are adding running exploration, because I do think that is a hard thing for a new DM to figure out. I still have some exploration problems. So sometimes I think my running exploration is a little dull. I think sometimes I could spice it up more. Sometimes it's just that the players are walking down a main road and maybe they run into a traveling merchant that isn't what they seem, or a group of bandits try to rob them at low levels because it is stupid to do that to a level 10 party. But there's little things like that where it's like, well, what do they do in between these two cities where some people, like myself, struggle sometimes?
chapter 3. Chapter 3 is a weirdo. So after we dispense with the advice on how to run a great game, and before we get into conversations about creating your own adventures and creating your own campaigns, there's a bunch of topics that have to be covered that are very situational. Traps, how poisons work, siege engines, information about NPC building, a bunch of these miscellaneous topics that the 2014 DMG covered, but they were sort of scattered
Right.
everywhere
So
throughout
these
the
are the
book.
building blocks.
Yes, this is a good way to look at it. Building blocks. We call chapter 3 the DM toolbox because it's just this cyclopedia of miscellaneous parts, toys that can come up in play. And we organized it alphabetically by topic. So it is this alphabetically topical listing of different things. You need more information about curses and how curses work. There's a section on curses. Hazards, green slime, yellow mold, brown mold, some new ones, fireball fungus.
No.
Yes. That's all.
I need to know what fireball fungus is. I love that so much. I need to know what that means, though.
All in the hazards section. It's a very well organized grab bag of miscellaneous topics that come up in games all the time.
And I adore that stuff. In the some of the Dungeon Master screens, there's a scale of damage. Like, what if you fell off a
improvised
mountain?
damage,
Yeah, what
yes.
if a meteorite fell? And here's the damage. That I found so helpful.
Yes.
Then
yes.
making it myself, it also was a nice point of, like, here's a really fun hazard to present to the players.
Yeah.
Because too often you can think about thinking about weapon damage and spell damage, but what happens when an avalanche hits you? What then? So that sounds like that entire chapter is that.
Yeah, and so that's the book all told. You've got it starts off with the fundamentals, then goes into the esoteric, and then it goes into the create your own stuff, and then it goes into the treasure and bastions, the goodies.
This is an entirely new book.
It is taking the wonderful bits of the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide and resorting them and blending them in a way with new stuff that does, in fact, turn it into a new book.
The 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide was kind of I use the word toolbox a lot. I love talking about that. That's what I love to do, is provide Dungeon Masters with a big box of tools and toys that they can take out and do stuff with.
Right.
The 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide was too much that. It was like just a big toolbox with not enough direction and guidance for how to use this stuff.
Yeah.
So the 2024 DMG starts from the very beginning, from the foundation of what it means to be the Dungeon Master's Guide. What are the roles that you take on at the table, and how do you wrangle your friends together to play this game, and what's the nature of your interaction with them, and really, we spend time in the Player's Handbook telling you how to play, and that this is fundamentally a narrative game where it's all in dialogue, and the DMG pulls the curtain back a little bit to show you what's going on inside the Dungeon Master's head while all that is happening. So we're teaching you really from the beginning, how do you do this amazing, awesome, terrifying task of running the game?
This has to be very exciting for you.
It is super exciting for me, partly because I felt that we didn't have as much time the last time around to really stick the landing on the Dungeon Master's Guide because we were a very small team doing a lot of work with very little resources. And this time around, it was nice to be able to, with 10 years of information, go back and say, okay, it's very rare to get a second crack at something. And I think this time around, a lot of thought over the years has been placed into creating a user experience around these books that is just much better. And I'm grateful for that time that we could do this, that we could take these books that millions of people use and they love, and just make them a better experience.
Thank you so much for watching. Every week leading up to the brand new 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, we'll have new videos and premieres telling you more about the book. To pre-order the 2024 Core Rulebooks digital physical bundle, click on the links in this video description and find out more about all the pre-order bonuses, including frames, backdrops, dice sets, digital dragon art book, and the digital golden dragon mini. I'm Todd Kenrick. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe button, and also the notification button so that you're alerted when we have brand new videos about the future of D&D.
I think Todd does an amazing job with these videos. We might have to make an adjustment to our October schedule. That might mean that while these videos are releasing, once a week I'm going to do D&D content. I want to review this stuff for the new DMG. And I want to do that with you guys. I want to give my thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Please comment if you have any thoughts on the new DMG. And I just want to be able to talk through it. I think that helps me, and hopefully it helps somebody out there that maybe doesn't understand something with this new content. I am really excited for the new core rulebooks. I am a big D&D fan. It is the only TTRPG I have played so far. I have plans to play the new one from, Cobalt Press. I forget the name of it. My friend got a copy. The artwork is beautiful. The covers are beautiful. I'm excited about that. I have ordered some 5e compendium stuff, like different modules. I know the animal one, I think it's Humblewood. I just ordered that. I have the Crooked Moon ordered from Legends of Adventurous. I got into that early, so I'm really excited about that. But the only game I've played so far is D&D. So I am a huge D&D fan, and I want to share that with you guys. Eventually, my D&D content might move to a different channel. I'm not saying the stuff I've already recorded, this will not move to a different channel, but eventually some of my D&D content may move to a different channel because I kind of want this channel to be mostly focused on gaming. But I have not decided if that's something I want to do yet. If you guys think that is something worth doing, please let me know in the comments also. I'm always open to feedback, but I love recording D&D content. If I do move all of my D&D stuff to a separate channel, I will be changing my profile picture. I don't know what to yet. My logo, I don't know what to yet. But I think that would be necessary if I move everything to a separate channel. Or maybe the Nat Blue channel becomes my D&D channel and I make like a Nat Blue Gaming. I think that would be okay too. You know? So I am considering making a separate channel for D&D content. Please let me know if that is something you would be interested in. I might be able to do something like weekly there. But like I said, my October schedule is going to change a little bit with the knowledge that some stuff is going to be coming about the DM's Guide over the next few weeks. So if you are interested in that, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you see when I post my content about the content. Hopefully, D&D is fine with this. So if I get copyright strikes or anything, I will let you guys know. But hopefully that's not going to be an issue. My old videos have still been kept up. So I haven't heard anything about that from WizKids or Hasbro or whoever. Wizards of the Coast, not WizKids. I think they're technically the same company, but WizKids is like the minis, maybe. That's a weird tangent to go on to. There is something I wanted to say about these videos specifically that does kind of bother me a little bit. And that is, I think Hasbro can afford shotgun mics. I understand. I love lav mics. I think lav mics are great. It does seem like the lav mics they use have caused a lot of problems. In the old videos that I've reviewed for the Player's Handbook, there were a lot of issues of the lav mic rustling on somebody's buttons when they were wearing a polo. This video, it seemed like they kept getting bumped into one of the guys, it seemed like he was just very expressive with his hands while he talks. So it kept rubbing against his other clothes. I think some boom mics would be good here. Some shotgun mics would be good here to where the audio is a little bit better. I know Hasbro can afford shotgun mics because they make movies and stuff. Like Transformers 1 is doing pretty well. You can buy some shotgun mics, guys. Weird gripe. I know my audio is not perfect. I have a lot of issues with audio. I am teaching myself everything though. And Hasbro definitely has audio engineers. So hopefully that is something they look into eventually. I just think they could do a little bit of a better job with audio. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did like the video, please leave a like. I normally say it earlier than this, but please leave a like on the video. Everybody appreciates the content getting liked. I am sorry that this is such a long video, but this is a very long YouTube video that I am reviewing. So it was kind of inevitable. I considered speeding up the video, but I think most people don't like that. I watch most of my YouTube content sped up, but I understand that is not normal, and I don't want to force you guys to listen to something at 1.5 to 2% speed. So, other than that, I hope everybody is having a great day, and until next time, peace.